Good afternoon, reading room. How are you? I feel like still have stuff in my teeth. Delicious pizza, though. Oh, we had a great CE classroom, which is what? Which is our classroom engagement. I feel like you can't see that again. But right before I got on, this thing just is starting to fall over by the, whatever. Halloween spirits that be. That's better. Doesn't say reading room, but it does. You can clearly see, what it is saying. You can clearly see the whole thing. Day 88. We are here on day 88. Let's get to our reading room. Reading room. The Wondrous Life of Oscar Junot Diaz. Remember we read the little poem? So what happened? A boy happened. Her first. Billy, right? Numero uno. Jack Poolhouse, of course, the school's handsomest, whitest boy. A haughty, slender, Melniboyane of pure European stock, whose cheeks looked like they'd been napped by a master and whose skin was unflawed by scar, mole, blemish, or hair. His small nipples were the pink perfection ovals of sliced salchicha. His father was a colonel in the Trujillo's beloved Air Force, a heavy-duty player in Bonnie, would be instrumental in bombing the capital during the revolution, killing all those helpless civilians, including my poor uncle Venicio. And his mother, a former beauty queen of Venezuelan proportions, now active in the church, a kisser of cardinal rings and a socorro of orphans. Jack, eldest son, privileged seed, hijo bello, anointed one, revered by his female family members, and that endless monsoon rain of praise and indulgence had quickened in him the bamboo of entitlement. He had the physical swagger of a boy twice his size, and an unbearable loudmouth cockiness that he drove into people like a metal spur. In the future, he would throw his lot in the demon Balaguer. We have to read because the footnotes, because those are just as entertaining as the reading. So, what is demon Balaguer? Although not essential to our tale per se, Balaguer is essential to the Dominican one, so therefore we must mention him, even though I'd rather piss in his face. The elders say anything uttered for the first time summons a demon, and when 20th century Dominicans first uttered the word freedom and mas, the demon they summoned was Balaguer. Known as the election thief, see the 1966 election in Dominican Republic, and the homunculus. In the days of the Trujillo, Balaguer was just one of El Jefe's more efficient ring wraiths. W-R-A-I-T-H-S. And ring in front of it, R-I-N-G. Much is made of his intelligence. He certainly impressed the failed cattle thief, and of his assertion when he raped his little girls, he kept it real quiet. After Trujillo's death, he would take over Project Domo and rule the country from 1960 to 1962, from 1966 to 1978, and again from 1986 to 1996. By then, dude was blind as a bat, a living mummy. During the second period of his rule, known locally as the 12 Years, he unleashed a wave of violence against the Dominican left, death squatting hundreds and driving thousands more out of the country. It was he who oversaw initiating the thing we call diaspora. Considering our national genius, Joaquin Balaguer was a negrophobe, an apologist to genocide, an election thief, and a killer of people who wrote better than himself, famously ordering the death of journalist Orlando Martinez. Later, when he wrote his memoirs, he claimed he knew who had done the foul deed, not him, of course, and left a blank page, a pagina en blanco, and the text to be filled in with the truth upon his death. Can you say impunity? Balaguer died in 2002. The pagina is still blanca. Appeared as a sympathetic character in Vargas Llosa's The Feast of the Goat. Like Moore Homunculi, he did not marry and left no heirs. Oh. Homunculi. Don't know. In the future, he would throw his lot in with Demon Balaguer and end up ambassador to Panama as his reward. But for the moment, he was the school's Apollo, its Mithra. The teachers, the staff, the girls, the boys, all threw petals of adoration beneath his finely arched feet. He was proof positive that God, the great God absolute, he was proof positive. Yeah. The center of circumference of all democracy does not love his children equally. And how did Bali interact with this insane object of attraction in a way that is fitting of her bullheaded directness? She would march down the hallway, books pressed up to her pubescent chest, staring down at her feet, and, pretending not to see him, would smash into his hallowed vessel. Karam, he spluttered, wheeling about, and then he'd see it was Belicia, a girl now stooping over to recover her books, and he bent over too. He was, if nothing, a caballero. His anger diffusing, becoming confusion, irritation. Caramba, Cabral, what are you, a bat? Watch where you're going. He had a single worry line ceasing his high forehead, his part, as it became known, and eyes of the deepest cerulean, the eyes of Atlantis. Once Bali had overheard him bragging to one of his many female admirers, "Oh, these old things, I inherited them from my German abuela." "Come on, Cabral, what's your difficulty?" "It's your fault," she swore meant in more ways than one. Maybe she'd see better, one of his lieutenants cracked, if it was dark out. It might as well have been dark out. For all intents and purposes, she was invisible to him, and would have stayed invisible too if the summer of sophomore year she'd not hit the biochemical jackpot, not experienced the summer of her secondary sex characteristics, not been transformed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. Where before Bali had been a gangly ibis of a girl, pretty in a typical sort of way, by summer's end she'd become un mujerón todo, acquiring that body of hers, that body that made her famous in Bonnie. Her dead parents' genes on some Roman Polanski shit, like the older sister she had never met. Bali was transformed almost overnight into an underage stunner. And if Trujillo Trujillo had not been on his last erections, he probably would have gunned for her like he'd been rumored to have gunned for her poor dead sister. For the record, that summer our girl caught a cuerpazo so berserk that only a pornographer or a comic book artist could have designed it with a clear conscience. Every neighborhood has its tetua. But Bali could have put them all to shame. She was La Tua Suprema. Her tetas were globes so implausibly titanic, they made generous souls pity their bearer and drove every straight male in their vicinity to reevaluate his sorry life. She had the breasts of Luba, 35 triple D. And what about that superb culo that could treat her words out of niggers' mouths, pull windows from their motherfucking frames? Aquello que helaba más que una junta de buey. Dios mío. Even your humble watcher reviewing her old pictures is struck by what a fucking babe she was. Ande el diablo, La Inca exclaimed. Hija, what in the world are you eating? If Bali had been a normal girl, being the neighborhood's most prominent tetua, might have pushed her into shyness, might even have depressed the shit out of her. And at first, Bali had both these reactions and also the feeling that girl that gets delivered to you by the bucket for free during adolescence. Shame. Sharam. Vergüenza. She no longer wanted to bathe with La Inca, a huge change to her morning routine. Well, I guess you're grown enough to wash yourself, La Inca said lightly, but you could tell she was hurt. In the close darkness of their wash closet, Belize circled disconsolately around her Nove Orbis, avoiding her hypersensitive nipples at all costs. Now, every time she had to head outside, Belief felt like she was stepping into a danger room filled with men's laser eyes and women's razor whispers. The blast of car horns enough to make her fall over herself. She was furious at the world for this newly acquired burden and furious at herself. For the first month, that is, gradually Belief began to see beyond the catcalls and the Dios mío, asesina, and ese tetorio, and the que pechanalida, to the hidden mechanisms that drove her comments. One day on the way back from the bakery, La Inca muttering at her side about that day's recipes, it dawned on Beli. Men liked her. Not only did they like her, they liked her a fucking lot. The proof was the day that one of their customers, the local dentist, slipped her a note with his money and it said, I want to see you. As simple as that. Beli was terrified, scandalized, and giddy. The dentist had a fat wife who ordered a cake from La Inca almost every month, either for one of her 7 children or for her 50-some cousins, but most likely for her and her alone. She had a rattle and an enormous middle-aged ass that challenged all chairs. Beli mooned over that note like it was a marriage proposal from God's hot son, even though the dentist was bald and paunchier than an OTB regular and had a tracery of fine red veins all over his cheeks. The dentist came in as he always did, but now his eyes were always questing. Hello, Senorita Belly. Billy, his greeting now fatigued with lust and threats, and Beli's heart would beat like nothing she'd ever heard. After 2 such visits, she wrote on a whim a little note that said simply, yes, you can pick me up at the park at tell time, and passed it back to him with his change, and by hook and crook arranged to be walking with La Inca through the park at the very moment of the assignation. Assigned time. Her heart going like crazy. She didn't know what to expect, but she had a wild hope. And just as they were about to leave the park, Beely spotted the dentist sitting in a car that was not his, pretending to read the paper, but looking forlornly in her direction. Look, madre, Beely said loudly. It's the dentist. And La Inca turned, and Homeboy threw the car frantically into gear and tore out of there before La Inca could even wave. How very strange, La Inca said. I don't like him, Beely said. He looks at me. And now it was his wife who came to the bakery to pick up the cakes. ¿Y el dentista? Beely inquired innocently. That one's too lazy to do anything, his wife said with no little exasperation. Beely, who'd been waiting for something exactly like her body her whole life, was sent over the moon by what she now knew, by the undeniable concreteness of her desirability, which was, in its own way, power. Like the accidental discovery of the One Ring, like stumbling into the wizard Shazam's cave, or finding the crashed ship of the Green Lantern. Hypatia, Belicia Cabral, finally had power and a true sense of self. Started pitching her shoulders back, wearing the tightest clothes she had. Dios mío, La Inca said every time the girl headed out. Why would God give you the burden in this country of all places? Telling Beely not to flaunt those curves would have been like asking the persecuted fat kid not to use his recently discovered mutant abilities. With great power comes great responsibility. Bullshit. Our girl ran into the future that her new body represented and never looked back. Hunt the Light Knight. K-N-I-G-H-T. Hunt the Light Knight. Now fully endowed, that's like now fully endowed, Beely returned to El Redentor from summer break to the alarm of faculty and students alike and set out to track down Jack Pujols with great deliberation of Ahab after you know who, and of all these things the albino boy was a symbol. Wonder ye then at the fiery hunt? Another girl would have been more subtle, drawn her prey to her. But what did Beely know about process of patience? She threw everything she had at Jack, batted her eyes so much at him that she almost sprained her eyelids, put her tremendous chest in his line of sight every chance she got, adapted a walk that got her yelled at by teachers, but that brought the boys and the male faculty a running. But Pujols was unmoved, observed her with his deep dolphin eyes, and did nothing. After about a week of this, Beely was going out of her mind. She had expected him to fall instantly, and so one day, out of shameless desperation, she pretended to accidentally leave buttons on her blouse open. She was wearing this lacy bra she stole from Dorca, who had acquired quite a nice chest herself. But before Beely could bring her colossal cleavage to bear, her very own wave motion gun, we, blushing deeply, ran over and buttoned her up. You showing, Jack drifting disinterestedly away. She tried everything but no dice. Before you know it, Beely was back to banging into him in the hall. Cabral, he said with a smile, you have to be more careful. Oh, there's a smile. I love you, she wanted to scream. I want to have all your children. I want to be your woman. But instead she said, you be careful. She was morose. September ended, and alarmingly enough, she had her best month at the school. Academically, English was her #1 subject. How ironic. She learned the names of the 50 states. She could ask for coffee, a bathroom, the time, where the post office was. Her English teachers, a deviant, assured her that her accent was superb, superb. The other girls allowed him to touch them, but Beely, now finally attuned to masculine weirdness and certain that she was worthy only of a prince, sidled out from under his balmy hands. A teacher asked them to start thinking about the new decade. Where would you like to see yourself, your country, and your glorious president in the coming years? No one understood the question, so he had to break it down into two simple parts. One of her classmates, Mauricio Letissimi, got in serious trouble, so bad that his family had to spirit him out of the country. It does say spirit, though. I'm not used to all the language. He was a quiet boy who sat next to one of the squadron, stewing always in his love for her. Perhaps he thought he'd impress her. Not that far-fetched, for soon comes the generation whose number one ass-getting technique will not be to be like Mike, but to be like Chi. Perhaps he just had enough. He wrote in the crabbed handwriting of a future poet revolutionary, I'd like to see our country be a democracia like the United States. I wish we would stop having dictators. Also, I believe that it was Trujillo who killed Galindez. Much in the news in those days, Jesse de Galindez was a Basque super nerd and a Columbia University grad student who had written a rather unsettling doctoral dissertation. The topic, lamentably, unfortunately, sadly, the era of Rafael Leonidas Trujillo Molina. Galindez, a loyalist in the Spanish Civil War, had first-hand knowledge of the regime. He had taken refuge in Santo Domingo in 1939, occupied high positions therein, and by his departure in 1946 had developed a lethal allergy to the failed cattle thief, could I have to get my because this print, I mean, look how small that print is. And this is, and always the footnotes are interesting to me. And I saw that, and now I can't remember where I saw it, but it wasn't upstairs. So it has to be right here. So give me 1 second. Sorry. Just give me 1 second. So I don't slaughter that. I think it's over here. Oh, I saw it. Oh, maybe it's right over here. Hold on. I saw it under one of my napkins and I was like, oh, I would never have found it here underneath this. So, but I'm like, but if I pull it out in the open, I'll see it. And I did. So I'm cleaning my glasses. least I made the time a little useful. Got my coffee. And my glass cleaner. All right, so... Crosswiller describes Galindez as a bookish man, a type frequently found among political activists in Latin America. The winner of a prize in poetry, what we in the higher planes call a nerd class. But dude was a ferocious leftist despite the dangers, gallantly toiling on his Trujillo dissertation. What is it with dictators and writers anyway? Since before the infamous Caesar Ovid war, they've had a beef, like the Fanatic Four and Galactus, like the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, like the Teen Titans and Deathstroke, Foreman and Ollie, Morrison and Crouch, Sammy and Sergio. They seem destined to be eternally linked in the halls of battle. Rushdie claims that tyrants and scribblers are natural antagonists, but I think that's too simple. It lets writers off pretty easy. Dictators, in my opinion, just know competition when they see it. Same with writers. Like, after all, recognizes like. Like, after all, recognizes like. Competition. So the writers are the competition for the dictators. Dictators are the competition for the writers. Long story short, upon learning of the dissertation, El Jefe first tried to buy the thing, and when that failed, he dispatched his chief, Nazgul, the sepulchre Felix Bernardino, to New York City, and within days, Galindez got gagged, bagged, and dragged to La Capitale, and legend has it, when he came out of his chloroform nap, he found himself naked, dangling from his feet over a cauldron of boiling oil. El Jefe standing nearby with a copy of the offending dissertation in hand, and you thought your committee was rough. Who in his right mind could ever have imagined anything so fucking ghastly? I guess El Jefe wanted to host a little tertulia with that poor doomed nerd. And what a tertulia it was. Dios mío. Anyway, Galindez's disappearance caused an uproar in the States, with all fingers pointing to Trujillo. But of course, he swore his innocence, and that was what Mauricio was referring to. But take heart, for every phalanx of nerds who die, there are always a few who succeed. Not long after that horrible murder, a whole pack of revolutionary nerds ran around on a sandbar on the southeast coast of Cuba. Yes, it was Fidel and revolutionary crew, back for a rematch against Batista. Of the 82 revolutionaries who splashed ashore, only 22 survived to celebrate the new year, including one book-loving Argentino. A bloodbath with Batista's forces executing even those who surrendered. But those 22, it would prove, were enough. Yeah, okay. So that's Galindez. That's all it took. The next day, both he and the teacher were gone. No one said nothing. There's another. No one said nothing. Reminds me of the sad case of Rafael Yepes. Yepes was a man who in the 30s ran a small prep school in the capital, not far from where I grew up, that catered to the Trujillatos, lower level ladroncitos. One ill-starred day, Yepes asked his students to write an essay on the topic of their choice. A broad-minded, Betances sort of man was this Yepes, and unsurprisingly, one boy chose to compose a praise song to Trujillo and his wife, Dofia Maria. Yepes made the mistake of suggesting in class that other Dominican women deserved as much praise as Dofia Maria, and that in the future young men like this student would also become great leaders like Trujillo. I think Yepes confused the Santo Domingo he was living in with another Santo Domingo. That night, the poor school teacher, along with his wife, his daughter, and the entire student body, was rousted from their beds by military police, brought in closed trucks to Fortress Azama, and interrogated. The pupils were eventually released, but no one ever heard of poor Yepes or his wife or his daughter again. You know, it's amazing when you don't have democracy, isn't it? But to come and have your tentacles come into the United States, right? And what kind of democracy do we have here when we have those tentacles coming into the United States and taking people? I don't know. I don't know. Meaning I really don't know the answer. Belle's essay was far less controversial. I will be married to a handsome, wealthy man. I will also be a doctor with my own hospital that I will name after Trujillo. At home, she continued to brag to Dorca about her boyfriend, and when Jack Pujol's photo appeared in the school newspaper, she brought it home in triumph. Dorca was so overwhelmed, she spent the night in her house, inconsolable, crying and crying. Bile could hear her loud and clear. And then in the first days of October, as the Pueblo was getting ready to celebrate another Trujillo birthday, Bile heard a whisper that Jack Pujols had broken up with his girlfriend. Bile had always known about this girlfriend who attended another school, but do you think she cared? She was sure it was just a rumor, didn't need any more hope to torture her. But it turned out to be more than rumor and more than hope, because not 2 days later, Jack Pujols stopped Bile in the hallway as though he were seeing her for the very first time. Cabral, he whispered, you're beautiful. The sharp spice of his cologne, like an intoxication, I know I am, she said, her face ablaze with heat, while he said, burying a mitt in his perfectly straight hair. The next thing you know, he was giving her rides in his brand new Mercedes and buying her helados with the knot of dollars he carried in his pocket. Legally, he was too young to drive, but do you think anybody in Santo Domingo stopped a colonel's son for anything, especially the son of a colonel who was said to be one of Ramfis Trujillo's confidants? Oh, that word just gets around my tongue, right? Trujillo's. So it's Ramfis Trujillo's confidants. Nobody's stopping this kid. That's what they're saying. Amor is the next chapter, and we will continue with this. We are not even halfway through with the book. Woo! I know, we picked a long one, didn't we? But that's okay, because, sometimes we just gotta indulge ourselves, don't we? Don't we sometimes just have to indulge ourselves? This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm going to indulge myself now. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't go outside. Really, it looks cool, and I did a lot of work outside, I told you, so I'm very happy about that. Thank you for joining me here in the reading room. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm the teacher. You've been here in the classroom. Thanks.